When your staff pushes back, it can be really tempting to just let it slide. But if they're sabotaging your plans, it can really mess up with your program. There are 7 psychological tactics, not talked about that much because they're from dark psychology, that they do put you back in charge. The warning is that they are not for the faint-hearted. Look, managing a team can be challenging at the best of times as a small business owner, especially when emotions are running high, and productivity slips quickly when emotions get out of control. When staff members push back, refuse to cooperate, or honestly throw tantrums, it can be really easy to feel cornered and stuck as the owner, and it's part of what isolates you at the top of running the business. But there is good news. With the right psychological tools, you can sort of gain control back without compromising any respect or authority. Now, this is not to say that it's negatively manipulative, but rather something that you can take charge of and have more power over than many owners believe they have. Today's video, we're going to talk about the 7 powerful, yet maybe a little bit controversial methods to de-escalate and even influence your team's mindset when it comes to getting them to follow the program that you're on, even when they're pushing back. These aren't typical management tactics. They dive into more of the deeper psychology of human behavior. When used thoughtfully, they can really transform difficult situations into highly productive outcomes and really help guide you and your team back into alignment and cooperation. Step 1, before you even start, is you have to ground yourself, especially if you're having some tension with your team. If you can't step into your power and approach the situation from a place of legitimate, loving detachment, then you will have problems. Basically, if your team senses that you're activated or emotionally charged, then they will likely amplify their reaction. It'll go the exact opposite way. On the other hand, if you remain calm and composed, their energy tends to eventually turn around because it has nowhere to go. So it actually turns back on them and it dissipates the larger impact. The important thing to remember here is that when one person's stress spreads to another person, the effect multiplies, and that happens exponentially on a team. So from this grounded place of loving detachment, first thing that you can do is try to establish an emotional connection. That's why you have to be so grounded. The key to this, number 1, is to start by showing genuine empathy. Now, don't bring in any logic. Don't bring in any facts. The number 1 mistake that I see is that owners, when they're having a difficult conversation with someone, start trying to argue the details and who's right or wrong, and that is very provocative. Usually, it just provokes defensiveness and it escalates the situation. So instead, subtly mirror the energy that is in front of you and gradually lead towards a more calm energy by bringing your own energy down over time. The key to this, though, is authenticity. If people sense that you are faking it, they will freak out and it will backfire. So this is not about being fake. It's about authentically, from your grounded place, showing empathy for the situation, mirroring what's happening, de-escalate by bringing the situation down, calming everything back down. The second thing you can do is to plant a seed of suggestion. Now, rather than directly telling somebody what to do, because again, that can be confrontational, you versus me, and that's where the problem can be. Make a subtle suggestion and let them reach the conclusion on their own. People are more receptive to their own ideas, even if it leads to the same exact outcome that you were telling them in the first place. So for example, instead of saying you should do XYZ, you might rephrase and say, what do you think about XYZ? Or wouldn't it be interesting if XYZ? And then let that seed that you've planted grow in their own mind until they come up with the same conclusion that you were trying to get them to, but they did it on their own. The other way that we might say this is you are co-creating the result that you actually want from them. All right, the third one is control the frame. In sales, we say that you are responsible for the structure of the conversation and the purchaser has control of the content. Similarly, in a difficult staff management situation, if you can keep the conversation focused strictly on the current issue, so you control the structure, the frame of what we're talking about, and ignore all attempts to divert, it will work out in your benefit. So make sure that you don't let everything spill or let anything spill into unrelated topics, and steer the dialogue towards solutions, not problems. If there's tension, you already know there's a problem. Solution-based conversation is where it's at. This helps to maintain control and really prevents the discussion from spiraling into an unproductive area where it's he said, she said, BS, as the song goes. All right, number 4, create the illusion of choice. When suggesting an action, present 2 or 3 options that all lead to the same desired outcome. This gives the sense of control because someone can decide how they're going to arrive to the outcome that you want, and they feel that they're actually choosing the path. Even if each option brings them to the exact same destination, that illusion of choice gives a sense of empowerment associated with it. Number 5, use what we call the Trojan horse technique. This is where you take a potentially sensitive suggestion, something that would be more difficult to discuss, and you wrap it in something more appealing. For example, you might say, I know sales conversations can feel intimidating at first, but mastering these simple techniques will unify our team and strengthen our ability to support those who come to us for help. If someone didn't want to do sales conversations, we're not giving in and saying like, you don't have to sell because you don't like it. We're reframing around the bigger why and the purpose and the positive outcome associated with it. Number 6, leverage silence. Yes, when someone refuses to de-escalate, try a long, uncomfortable pause. And I do mean uncomfortable. This sort of silent treatment creates a protective barrier around you. And that barrier automatically reflects their energy back onto themselves, which they probably don't like. And it really helps to prompt them to reconsider their behavior. So rather than being confrontational and fighting back, just say nothing, do nothing, be quiet, and you'll be surprised how quickly it can de-escalate the situation. And number 7 is the most controversial of these, prompt self-reflection. It's controversial because if used incorrectly, the other way to say this is gaslighting. So instead of overt gaslighting, because you shouldn't do that, that's an a-holery, encourage self-reflection by prompting through questioning assumptions. Questions such as, that's interesting. How do you know that that's true? Or what makes you think it happened exactly like that? Or could there be another way that we might look at this? Or what might be influencing the way that we're feeling about this here, the way that you're feeling about this here? The idea is that these questions sort of gently challenge the perspective that they have, leading them to a more thoughtful and self-aware state. Not by discrediting their feelings or thoughts, but getting them to look at it again in a new way. The truth is, managing people isn't always easy. In fact, I would say it's in the top 3 biggest complaints that we get as coaches, especially when emotions take over. But when you use these sort of techniques that you now have in your tool belt, you can turn difficult situations into moments of clarity and cooperation. And the thing to remember here is that these tactics aren't about manipulation for manipulation's sake. They're about bringing out the best in your team, even when the most difficult challenges arise. What we find is when owners lead a team from these places and help this deeper introspective and connective conversation to take place, you ultimately end up with a more congealed force. What do you guys think about it? All right, see you in the next one. Peace.